Today on the Matt Walsh Show, today is the day that my film, Am I Racist, is finally available to watch at home on DailyWire Plus. It couldn't hit streaming at a better time. I'll explain why. Also, Donald Trump had a huge weekend. First was his marathon interview with Joe Rogan, then his massive rally at Madison Square Garden. The Democrats are getting very nervous, and they should be. Kamala's campaign tried to counter-program by falsely advertising a Beyoncé performance that never happened, and then having Tim Walz live stream on Twitch. Meanwhile, Michelle Obama gives a shockingly angry and bitter speech, hoping to convince men to vote by berating them. I don't think it will work. We'll talk about all that and more today on The Matt Walsh Show. Let's talk about the economy. It's still a dumpster fire for many of us, thanks to the incompetence of our leaders. But here's a rare bit of good news. The Fed has finally dropped interest rates. So if you want to put your family in a better financial position, now is the time to act. Listen up, homeowners. If you've been forced to put everyday expenses on credit cards just to get by, American Financing has a solution. They're helping thousands of families just like yours get out from under that crushing debt by tapping into their home's equity. It's not a handout, it's your money, and you should be able to use it. American Financing is saving their borrowers over $800 a month on average. That's like getting a $10,000 raise at work without having to learn any corporate newspeak. And it costs absolutely nothing to find out how much you can save. They're moving fast, too. They're closing some loans in as little as 10 days. And if you start today, you might not even have to make next month's mortgage payment. Imagine that, keeping your hard-earned money away from the banks for a change. There's no better time than now to turn your financial situation around. But don't wait for the government to fix things. We all know how that goes. Take control yourself. Call American Financing today, 800-906-2440. That's 800-906-2440. Or if you're more digitally inclined, visit americanfinancing.net/Walsh, NMLS 182334, NMLSconsumeraccess.org. Do it now before the next economic crisis hits. NMLS 182334, NMLSconsumeraccess.org. In just over a week from today, we will know who the next president of the United States is going to be. Or maybe it'll be more like 2 weeks from today or 2 months, or it could be at exactly 2 a.m. on Wednesday morning when a bunch of ballots for Kamala Harris materialize magically out of the ether. It's very difficult to predict, but one way or another, sometime in the not-too-distant future, we will have a new president. That much we know. We also know that no matter what happens on November 5th and the days and weeks that follow, the fight for our culture will continue. Now, hopefully, we'll be marching forward with a victorious spirit and a feeling of triumph, having just defeated Kamala Harris and having sent her to fade into obscurity to never again be spoken of, because we can be sure that if she loses, the Democrat Party will throw Kamala and her whole camp into the deepest and darkest memory hole they can find and pretend she never existed. God willing, that's our future. One where we're the winning side, and our job is to keep pushing forward, keep pressing our advantage, turning political success into cultural change. But it's also quite possible that things go the other way, and Kamala wins. Whether she actually wins or not, she ends up being president. And in that case, we will not be feeling quite so victorious or triumphant. We will be condemned in that scenario to 4 years of that hideous, ungodly cackle ringing in our ears. And the auditory torture, of course, will be the least of our problems. It'll be a deeply depressing reality, no way around it. Yet, the fight will continue in that case, too, and take on a new and greater urgency. So there is no scenario, there's no outcome in this election or any election that will allow us to kick up our feet or hang our heads and declare the fight over, for better or worse. It continues, and so do we. And that's why I think it's good timing that my new film, Am I Racist, debuts on DailyWire today, October 28th, right now as I speak. You can go to dailywire.com, sign up for a membership, and watch the #1 documentary of the decade, which is also one of the top 35 highest grossing documentaries of all time. Am I Racist is my satirical investigation of the DEI scam and the left-wing race hustle that makes that scam possible. The film follows my profoundly emotional and heartfelt journey of self-discovery and racial awakening, a journey that begins with me becoming DEI certified and ends, well, you'll just have to see where it ends for yourself. Things get very weird and very dark, but also always, I think, hilarious. And I say that it's good timing for the film to hit the platform today, available to watch right now after you become a member, for, a couple of reasons. And first of all, the most obvious one is that Kamala Harris is truly our first DEI presidential candidate. Now, she's not the first race hustling candidate. We've had plenty of those, unfortunately, in my lifetime. And she's not the first to run on a platform grounded in left-wing intersectional victimology. We've had plenty of those too. She is the worst of that bunch in both cases, but not the first. She is, however, the first person in the history of American politics to have been awarded a major party presidential nomination purely because she checks the necessary demographic boxes and without a single vote being cast in her favor. The first one who is just put in that position totally unqualified and did not earn it at all. And that's DEI. So calling her a DEI candidate, it's not a slur, or at least if it is a slur, it happens to be an accurate one. We came up with the idea for Am I Racist all the way back in the fall of 2022, shortly after my first film, What is a Woman, was released. And we had no way of knowing back then, or at any point during the about 18 months of filming, that our cinematic broadside against the DEI scam would land right before an election featuring our first DEI candidate. Now, we thought at the time that it would be an election featuring our first fully comatose candidate in Joe Biden. Instead, we have one who's only partially comatose in Kamala Harris. But then Biden, of course, as you remember, was sacked just a few weeks after we finished post-production on the film. And pretty soon it became obvious that Am I Racist was more relevant and more timely than we ever anticipated it would be. And at the time, it reminded us of that moment in March of 2022 when Marsha Blackburn famously asked Ketanji Brown Jackson to define the word woman. The soon-to-be Supreme Court justice infamously responded that she's not a biologist and therefore cannot answer a question that any halfway literate third grader could answer. That moment propelled the what is a woman question into the headlines. And as it happened, back then, we had just wrapped post-production on a movie with that question as its title. Now, at the risk of sounding too self-serious, I don't think that these are mere fortunate coincidences for the film. I believe that in both cases, we made the films that God wanted us to make, and they were unleashed on the world right when they needed to be. Filming Am I Racist was a longer and more painful process than I imagined it would be at the start. The thing about a creative project that takes a long while to finish is that you have plenty of time, way too much time, to second guess yourself while you're making it. And eventually you start to wonder why you ever took on the project to begin with. To be honest, I've written 3 books and made 2 movies, and the why did I ever decide to do this phase seems to just be an inevitable part of the creative process, I guess. At least it is for me. But with this film and the last one, the answer to the why question became very clear once it was finished and released. Am I Racist is exposing a type of evil that has now been made manifest politically in the candidacy of Kamala Harris. And she is just one manifestation, however dire and dangerous. Left-wing racial ideology has wreaked havoc on society much more broadly than this one person. It's an evil that not only deserves to be mocked, but must be mocked ruthlessly and mercilessly, as we do in the film. That's why I'm glad that the movie is hitting streaming on the DailyWire today, a week before the election, because now is the best possible time to confront this madness for what it is and laugh hysterically at it. The second point is that the larger fight isn't just about DEI or race or even the election. This, as we are constantly saying, this is a fight for the culture. And what is the culture? Well, the culture is everything. It's all the values and beliefs and traditions and customs and characteristics that define us as a nation. That's why I have no patience for people, especially conservatives. And you hear this from conservatives sometimes, who kind of roll their eyes and wave away the quote unquote culture war as some kind of irrelevant sideshow. But it's not a sideshow. I mean, it's the whole show. It's the fight over who we are and who we will be. What could possibly be more important than that? Our culture is nothing less than, the stuff that our country is made of. So the culture matters for the same reason that the air you're breathing right now matters. And culture is shaped and influenced by many things, but not by any one thing so much as art, movies, TV shows, music, entertainment. You cannot fight for the culture if you aren't fighting in that realm. And that's why we took on the significant expense and risk of making Am I Racist and even putting it in theaters before the platform released today. It's also why, in making the film, our number one rule that we set for ourselves during the production is that it had to be funny, it had to be entertaining, and it had to tell a story. We put that ahead, actually, of the message, ahead of the desire to inform, although we had a message and we wanted to inform the audience. We put it ahead of all that because this needed to be a real film, not a sermon wearing the thin cloak of a film. It needed to be a film that people watch and enjoy because they enjoy it, not because they think they should enjoy it, or because they think that it's their responsibility to enjoy it, or because they enjoy the idea of it, even if they don't enjoy the actual thing all that much. That's how conservative art has worked for many years, and for that reason, conservative art has had basically no cultural impact for years. It just hasn't mattered. And we wanted to help change that. That was the ambition that drove us to make this movie and to make it the way we made it. It's also what drives all of us here at the Daily Wire every day. We're here to move the culture. That is our single-minded focus. It's the only thing we care about. And we can't do it without you. So go to dailywire.com, get your membership if you haven't yet, and watch Am I Racist, which you can do right now, or maybe after the show at least. And then stick around for what's next, because one way or another, the fight is truly just beginning. Now let's get to our 5 headlines. Grand Canyon University, a private Christian university in beautiful Phoenix, Arizona, believes that we are endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. GCU believes in equal opportunity and that the American dream starts with purpose. GCU equips you to serve others in ways that promote human flourishing and create a ripple effect of transformation for generations to come. By honoring your career calling, you impact your family, your friends, and your community. Change the world for good by putting others before yourself to glorify God. Whether your pursuit involves a bachelor's, master's, or doctoral degree, GCU's online, on-campus, and hybrid learning environments are designed to help you achieve your unique academic, personal, and professional goals. With 350 academic programs as of June 2024, GCU meets you where you are and provides a path to help you fulfill your dreams. The pursuit to serve others is yours. Let it flourish. Find your purpose at Grand Canyon University, private, Christian, affordable. Visit gcu.edu. So it's a big weekend for Donald Trump. It began with him on Joe Rogan. Last I checked, last night anyway, the episode had like 30 million views, which on just on YouTube. I don't know how many, then all the downloads on Spotify and the other platforms. But insane, just totally insane. And Trump talked to Joe for 3 hours. 3 hours is also insane. Trump's stamina at 78 years old is truly like mind-boggling. I'm half his age, and I've never done an interview that was more than 2.5 hours long at the most. And I always feel completely spent at the end of interviews that are that long. Now, sure, it's not like you're just sitting there and having a conversation. You're not running a marathon, but that's a long time to sit in one place and talk to somebody. It's very mentally taxing. But Trump, by the end of it, he seemed like he could go for another 3 hours. I mean, it was pretty remarkable. There were a bunch of great moments. It was 3 hours long, so you can kind of take your pick. I'll play just one clip. I don't think I need to play more because, well, first of all, like everybody in the country has already listened to this episode, apparently. But I did enjoy this little moment on the Rogan show. Here it is.
So I always got more publicity than other people, and it wasn't like I was trying. In fact, I don't know exactly why. Maybe you can tell me why.
Oh, I could definitely tell you. You said a lot of wild
Maybe. Maybe
you said a lot of wild and then CNN, in all their brilliance, by highlighting your wild made you much more popular.
Yeah.
And they boosted you in the polls because people were tired of someone talking in this pre-prepared politician lingo. And even if they didn't agree with you, they at least knew whoever that guy is, that's him. That's really him. Yeah. When you see certain people talk, certain people in the public eye, you don't know who they are. You have no idea who they are. It's very difficult to know. You see them in conversations. They have these pre-planned answers. They say everything. It's very rehearsed. You never get to the meat of it. one of the beautiful things about you is that you free ball. Like you get out and you do these huge events and you're just talking and you're making. We've highlighted you on the show many times when you did this Biden impression where he's walking around, he doesn't know what he's doing. It's funny. It's stand up. It's funny stuff. But it's like you and you were making fun of Elon one time. You were doing an Elon impression. It's great. You have like comedic instincts. Like when you said to Hillary, you'd be in jail. Like it's great timing.
Yeah.
But it's like that kind of stuff was unheard of as a politician. Like no one had done that.
I do think it's probably the presidential history there. I think I mean, I don't know this, but it's probably the first time in American history that somebody has used the term free ball while talking to a presidential candidate. And also wild too. Probably the first time that those two terms have been used in a conversation with a presidential candidate. So he said that Trump, got a lot of attention, ultimately won because he said a lot of wild stuff, and the media covered it constantly. Now, I don't think that most of what Trump has said is actually all that wild, and Joe didn't mean it as an insult, obviously, but there is a strategy there that we'll get back to that in a moment, actually. The point for now is that Trump has done something here that Kamala Harris just could never do. And Joe Rogan said in that interview with Trump that Kamala was supposed to do the show, I guess was supposed to have already done it, but she didn't show up, Joe said. Of course she didn't, because she's completely incapable of sitting down and talking on camera in a forum like that for 3 hours or even 1 hour. And now she definitely can't do it, because if she does it now, then she has to go the full 3 hours, because that's what Trump did, and that's just not going to happen. Because it's not possible to stay on script for that long in that kind of environment. And Kamala is so fraudulent and so fundamentally hollow and empty that she can't have an unscripted conversation without all kinds of guardrails and rules put in place ahead of time. And unfortunately for Kamala, it's the worst possible timing for her, because she happens to be running against the most unscripted politician in American history. She's the most scripted going against the most unscripted, and it's not a favorable contrast to her. And in that way, Trump has really changed the game here. I mean, obviously he's changed it in many ways, but this is one of them, and I think it's a very positive way that he's changed our expectation for political candidates. Because now we expect them to be real people, to be able to sit down and have a normal conversation. And Kamala is just an empty pantsuit. She's a total fake, completely vacuous, but not unlike many other politicians in that regard. And it wasn't always that way. You go back to before the modern era, before modern media and the internet and everything else and cable news, and politicians were serious, thoughtful people back then, capable of having long conversations, But then modern media came along and cable news, and it meant that these people would be in front of our faces all the time, but only for brief moments. Brief but constant moments. And that gave rise to the talking point politician, the soundbite politician, the politician who speaks in 45-second sound bites, tailor-made for cable news and internet clips, but can't speak beyond that. And the vacuous half-wits like Kamala Harris have just thrived in that environment. But then came Trump. And Trump speaks off the cuff. He's unscripted. He'll talk to anybody in any forum. He'll do 3-hour interviews. He'll give 90-minute unscripted speeches. And so he's changed our expectations again. And so we're going into kind of this third phase of politicians in America, where now you need to be able to get attention, get coverage, generate media as Trump does, and all of that. But you also need to be real and authentic and unguarded. I think the age of the soundbite politician is coming to an end. And a lot of the current political class is in trouble because that's all they have. All they have are the sound bites. And that's certainly the case for Kamala. So that was Joe Rogan. Then Trump's big weekend continued. On Sunday, he packed out Madison Square Garden in New York City, a huge rally. Big-time A-listers were there in attendance and speaking. Elon Musk was there again, Tucker Carlson. And Trump gave a good speech. But I want to focus on one of the warm-up acts that's getting a lot of the attention. The comedian Tony Hinchcliffe of Kill Tony fame was invited and delivered basically a stand-up set. Well, not basically. I mean, he delivered a stand-up set earlier in the night before Trump came out. And It was shockingly funny, I have to say. And I say shockingly not because I didn't think Hinchcliffe was funny. He's a great comedian. It's shocking only because it's a political rally. And when's the last time a comedian was allowed to be actually funny at a political rally? I don't think it's ever happened before. It's unheard of. I mean, these days at least. But Hinchcliffe let loose, and it led to a whole lot of outrage. His jokes were trending last night. Tons of headlines about them. Kamala's team tweeting frantically. The left is very upset, very offended. Lots of headlines like this from from Huffington Post. Comedian Tony Hinchcliffe performs wildly racist set at Trump rally in New York City. Hinchcliffe made a series of vile comments about Latinos, Jews, and black people during Trump's rally at Madison Square Garden. Tons of other headlines like that. And this includes also, predictably, some conservatives who are also expressing their disappointment and saying this was not appropriate. He shouldn't have made these jokes. This is really going to hurt Trump. So let's go through some of. They're basically. It seems like there were 3 jokes basically that were apparently the most offensive to people, and that are getting a lot of the attention. First, there was this one about Puerto Rico. Let's listen.
It is absolutely wild times. It really, really is. And, there's a lot going on. Like, I don't know if you guys know this, but there's literally a floating island of garbage in the middle of the ocean right now. Yeah. I think it's called Puerto Rico. Okay. All right. Okay. We're getting there.
Terribly offensive, we're told. The media is very, very angry about it. The same media that calls all white conservatives Nazis, the same media that has repeatedly claimed that this very rally was a Nazi rally, which means all the audience members who are also Nazis, that media is deeply offended, deeply offended, very troubled by this joke. This is, how could you say something so disparaging about an entire group of people? At least that group of people. But, this other group, white conservatives, you can, keep something in mind. When you label all these people Nazis, as the media constantly does, it's not just an insult. Like, what you're saying is that they don't deserve to live. You're justifying the mass eradication of millions of people. And that's what they're saying. But yet they're offended by this, relatively tame joke. There was also this joke that Hinchcliffe told about his black friend. This is another very offensive one, allegedly. Here it is.
Heck yeah, it's a cool black guy with a thing on his head. What the hell is that, a lampshade? Look at this guy. Oh my goodness. Wow. I'm just kidding. That's one of my buddies. He had a Halloween party last night. We had fun. We carved watermelons together. It was awesome. You guys.
And then finally, there was one more horrifically offensive one. Oh yeah, there was this one where he makes a joke about both Jews and Arabs. Both get a joke, and we're supposed to cry about this too. Here it is.
Unbelievable what's happening right now. It is incredible. Ukraine versus Russia, Israel, it's like bad soccer games. Who even cares? What are we doing? Why is our money involved in these wars? When it comes to Israel and Palestine, we're all thinking the same thing. Settle your stuff already. Best out of 3. Rock, paper, scissors. You know the Palestinians are going to throw rock every time. But you also know the Jews have a hard time throwing that paper. You know what I'm saying? All right, we're having fun now. We're cooking.
So he made fun of Puerto Ricans, black people, Jews, and Arabs. That's a pretty equal opportunity offender. Were they offensive jokes? I mean, yeah, if you're a whiny little baby, they're offensive to you. If those jokes are offensive to you, then you're just a whiny, pathetic, ridiculous, sad sack of a human being. If it was actually offensive, okay, not like you're pretending to be, but if you heard any of those jokes and were actually hurt by them, then you're just a ridiculous person. And your opinion doesn't matter. Which, of course, describes the media, which is why they've been screeching about this, and Kamala's campaign has been screeching about it. As I said, even some conservatives are saying, this is, this was not, this was, it was too far. This was too far. Look, first of all, if you're on the right, we should all understand by now this general rule that when the left is upset about something and they're, getting the pitchfork mob together, you never join it, ever. Like, it's just, I don't care if you agree with them. You still don't join it. You never join the left-wing pitchfork mob. Never. You never legitimize it under any circumstance. Especially not this, when they're jokes that we're talking about. And here's the thing. Normal people are not offended. Normal people of all races and ethnicities are not offended. Why? Because these are the kinds of jokes that normal people tell. It's like in a normal environment. If somebody made any of those comments, in your living room or something, nobody would start crying about it. Nobody would. And that's always been the not so secret of Trump's political success, is that he says something. I mean, he didn't say this, but it was at his rally. But generally, he says something, the media cries about it, and then everyone else thinks, well, yeah, but that's how I talk. That's how my friends talk. Why would I be offended by that? And I also think that that's maybe the deeper strategy here. I'm not one, as you know, to get into the 4D chess stuff with Trump, but I do think there's a reason why they invited a comedian to this event, and they invited one who's known for telling jokes like this. This is not, like, anyone who's a fan of this guy is not surprised by it. Like, these are the kinds of jokes that he tells. And they invited this particular comedian. And the reason, I think, is that, and this is not even really 4D chess. This is just this is like pretty basic strategy. The reason is that they knew he would tell some edgy jokes, and they knew the media and the Dems would not be able to help themselves, and they would spend the next, 3 to 5 days crying about it. So Trump is goading the Dems into spending their final week on the campaign trail crying about jokes, that's exactly the kind of school marmish nonsense that killed them in 2016. And Trump is harnessing that energy again. I think it's pretty smart, actually. If they want to spend their time, you got 1 week left, and you want to spend your time crying about a joke, then I think Trump's more than happy to allow them to do that. Go ahead. It's kind of just like dangling that bait out there. Go ahead and take it. And they can't help themselves. So I think that's, I don't think it hurts Trump at all, ultimately. All right. Kamala Harris was in a bind this weekend because, Trump went on Rogan, as we talked about. He had the thing at Madison Square Garden, getting a lot of headlines, doing all the exciting stuff. How are they going to compete? How will they counter-program? Well, they decided to do it by bringing out the big guns on Friday, which is Beyoncé. The news spread on Friday that Beyoncé would perform at Kamala's rally in Houston. Now, granted, these aren't really big guns. I mean, they're more like Nerf guns. Beyoncé performing isn't really that big of a deal. It's not going to move the needle that much. Beyoncé performed for Hillary Clinton, so it's not even a new thing. It didn't matter that much then. It probably wouldn't matter now. The only people really excited are the people who are already going to vote for Kamala anyway. So the only way that you can move the needle with Beyoncé, actually, is by moving it the wrong way. You're not going to win new voters by having her perform, but you could piss off your current voters if you, let's say, advertised a Beyoncé performance only for her to then not actually perform, which is exactly what happened. The account New Rebel Records on Twitter has a pretty good thread on this. You can look at it with all the receipts, but it's very clear that the media reported extensively on Friday that Beyoncé would perform at the Kamala Harris rally. And we could only assume that they were reporting that because that's what they were told by the campaign. But then Beyoncé came out and rather than performing, instead we got this. Let's watch.
H-Town. to be standing here on this stage as proud country Texas women supporting and celebrating the one and only Vice President Kamala Harris. A woman who's been pushing for what this country really needs right now: unity. It's impossible not to feel the energy in this room, the positivity, the community, the humanity. We are at the precipice of an incredible shift, the brink of history. I'm not here as a celebrity. I'm not here as a politician. I'm here as a mother. A mother who cares deeply about the world my children and all of our children live in. A world where we have the freedom to control our bodies.
So she gave a speech, and it was about 4 minutes long, as what you would expect. Speaking as a mother, she says, a mother who wants to make sure that her daughter can get abortions, a very concerned mother, a mother who's worried that her grandchildren might be allowed to exist, very concerned about that. Beyoncé wants her lineage and her billion-dollar fortune to be extinguished. She doesn't want descendants beyond her children. Like every other Democratic woman, the most important thing in the world to her is that babies continue to die. And that was her message. And that was it. She did not perform. So all of those people came there, not to see Kamala, because nobody cares about that. They came to hear Beyoncé pretend to sing, and she didn't, which is hilarious. She just introduced Kamala and then left. There was no performance. And then so here's the reception that greeted Kamala after the crowd figured out that Beyoncé was not going to be performing. Listen.
Thank you. See you later. See you later.
Some are chanting Kamala. There's confusion. You can hear some boos in the crowd, and you understand how they feel. They're not. Beyoncé sucks, but if you're a Beyoncé fan and all you get is a quick speech, and then 45 minutes of Kamala Harris, like that has to be a letdown. It's like if you imagine if a restaurant advertised that Gordon Ramsay would be in the kitchen on Friday nights, and so you go and make reservations and you sit down and they bring the meal out and it's some soggy, disgusting cheeseburger and you're like, Gordon Ramsay made this? And they say, oh no, he's not cooking. He was just in the kitchen for a few minutes. He gave a speech to the kitchen staff and then left. It's sort of like that. And why would they do that? What was the point? Why not just have Beyoncé perform? Well, the first part is obvious. They lied about her performing because that was the only way to fill out the stadium. They needed to have a big stadium to try and counteract both the Rogan interview and, that got like 20 million views in an hour on YouTube, and the MSG event later that weekend. The only way to do that was to claim that some big pop star was performing because nobody gives a damn about Kamala Harris. But then why didn't Beyoncé actually perform? Well, I can only assume it's because she hates Kamala Harris. Like that's an underrated fact through this whole campaign season, is that Kamala is hated by everybody, including her own side. Her people hate her. Joe Biden hates her. Obama hates her. The celebrities endorsing her hate her. And Beyoncé hates her so much that she wouldn't even perform at the rally. And, so you could kind of see what Beyoncé's thought process was, that she felt like she had to at least endorse Kamala and speak at the rally because she performed for Hillary. She couldn't get away with doing nothing at all for Kamala, who's not only a female candidate, but a non-white female candidate. So Beyoncé did the bare minimum but then didn't perform. It's pretty amazing. Everybody hates this woman. And why do they hate her? Well, because she's utterly talentless and completely phony. And here's, by the way, example 99,532 of her being talentless and phony. This was Kamala addressing a church on Sunday, and this is a very short clip, but as short as it is, it's still difficult to get through. Listen.
Weeping may endure for a night, but joy cometh in the morning. The path may seem hard, the work may seem heavy, but joy cometh in the morning, and church morning is on its way.
My God. I mean, she's so bad at this. She's so bad at this, and nobody on her team is apparently telling her that. None of them have the cojones to tell her to stop doing this, to tell her that she's a punchline. Every time she lapses into the black preacher thing, it's not convincing. She's bad at it, and no one tells her that. So she continues to embarrass herself, and it's just brutal. It's more brutal every single time. All right, moving on to this. Tim Walz is also doing his best to counterprogram Trump, and it's interesting. They have to kind of lean into Tim Walz, present him as the relatable and likable one, and think about that for a minute. Think about how bad this is for Team Kamala. It's so bad that Tim Walz, the weird old creepy guy, is the relatable and likable one on the ticket. He has to fill that role for them. And so their latest attempt to present him that way was on Sunday, where they had him do a streaming event on Twitch with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. The two of them were going to play a video game and stream on the platform Twitch. So they didn't produce the Beyoncé concert they promised. They didn't do that, but at least they can have a 60-year-old man play Madden on Twitch. That's their plan B. And I'm sure the kids will love that. This was their way of appealing to the youth, because kids love nothing more than watching 60-year-old men play video games. A 60-year-old man and a 35-year-old woman playing video games. That's what really that's what connects with the youth. That's what the kids love to see. So here's a clip of that very exciting event. Here it is.
Unbelievable. No, and I keep going back to this. This is Project 2025 from Personal Freedoms. I think a lot of folks on here are kind of independent folks, independent thinkers about things. Why would you want the government telling you what books to read or what doctor to see or how big your family can be? That kind of stuff is ridiculous. And so I think you talk about football planning, it's the same way. If you're going to draw up a playbook in football, you're going to use it. Those guys drew up a playbook, and it's Project 2025.
And they put millions of dollars into Project 2025. You don't spend millions of dollars without planning to use it.
Oh, God, no. And it's all these people around him. And J.D. Vance said, I don't know anything about it. He wrote the foreword of the book of The Architect, who wrote that.
Wow. I thought it would be boring to watch some old guy play a video game, but I'm impressed. I have to say that it's even more boring than I imagined. If you're going to do this, then if you're doing the Twitch stream to appeal to young voters, that young male voters, it's pretty obvious, again, trying to counter-program Trump and on Rogan and all that. Well, if you're going to do it, then you need to have some lively, funny, casual banter. It can't just be your normal CNN talking points that you're regurgitating while you play a video game. That defeats the whole purpose. If there even was a purpose, it defeats it. And not to mention, I also have to point out that if you were watching the gameplay there, it was a horrible play call. Like, I don't know which of them was playing offense there, but the center pulled to the left, but the running back didn't follow him. Instead, the center pulled to the left, the running back ran right up the hole, but there were no blockers on the second level, so he got stuffed after, a 1-yard gain. I mean, that's what happens. And Tim Walz is supposed to be a football coach. And he got stuffed. And Tim has, a lot of experience getting stuffed. Politically. It's not a game. Get your mind out of the gutter. I mean, here's what I'm saying. His hapless campaign is constantly drawing up bad plays and then failing to execute even those plays. That's all I'm trying to say. And also, our producer Greg watched some of this stream, and he tweeted that Walz repeatedly called Elon Musk a d- during the stream. And I don't have that clip, but this is something that Walz has taken to saying while on the campaign trail. This is, I guess he's decided that this is something that makes him sound like a tough guy to call Elon Musk a d- So here he was last week with that same talking point. Here it is.
So look, I'm not going to waste all the time I'm in. I'm going to talk about his running mate. His running mate, Elon Musk. Seriously. Where is Senator Vance after he got asked the simplest question in the world at the debate? Did Donald Trump lose the 2020 election? And after 2 weeks, he finally said, no, he didn't. That's where he's been spending his time. But that's it. So, look, Elon's on that stage, jumping around, skipping like a on these things. You know it.
Yeah, he's so impressed with himself for saying the S word, and he really leans into it. You know, he really puffs his chest out and says that he's very impressed with himself. But here's the thing, Tim. You are a weird old man, best known for distributing tampons to underage boys. Elon Musk, on the other hand, is literally building interplanetary rockets. Okay, and I think there's a general rule of thumb here, which is that if someone builds, like even if you build just one rocket, okay, one rocket, let alone a whole fleet of rockets, but if you build just one rocket, you are forever and always immune from any charges of being a, you can't. It's not possible for someone to build a rocket to go to Mars and also be a at the same time. That doesn't happen. But on the other hand, there are who get elected to public office. That happens all the time. All the time. And Tim Walz is exhibit A of that. Let's talk about something that affects all of us, taxes. The October 15th deadline has passed, and if you're not prepared, you could be in for a world of hurt. Do you owe back taxes? Are your returns still unfiled? Did you miss the deadline to file for an extension? Now that we're past October 15th, the IRS is probably gearing up for some aggressive enforcement, and trust me, you don't want to be on their radar. We're talking wage garnishments, frozen bank accounts, or even property seizures. It's not pretty, folks. But before you start panicking, there's still hope. Tax Network USA has helped taxpayers save over $1 billion in tax debt and filed over 10,000 tax returns. These guys specialize in reducing tax burdens for hardworking Americans just like you. Look, I get it. Dealing with the IRS is about as fun as a root canal, but ignoring the problem won't make it go away. Don't wait any longer. For a complimentary consultation, call today at 1-800-958-1000 or visit their website at tnusa.com/Walsh. Their experts will walk you through a few simple questions to see how much you can save. That's 1-800-958-1000 or visit tnusa.com/Walsh today. Don't let the IRS take advantage of you. Get the help you need with Tax Network USA. All right, folks, as we talked about, just open the show. Am I Racist? That's a comedy that now is the #1 grossing documentary of the decade. Has just dropped exclusively on DailyWire Plus. And if you thought what you saw in theaters was the whole show, we have a surprise for you. DailyWire Plus members get the good stuff, the deleted scene you won't find anywhere else. Plus, exclusive extras where I break down step by step exactly how I pulled off what has been called the greatest troll in history against the left. Talking about full behind-the-scenes footage showing how we brought this box office hit comedy to life. If you're not a DailyWire Plus member, now's the time. Go to AmIRacist.com. Use code DEI for 35% off your membership. Yes, that's code DEI. This isn't just a movie. It's the playbook for winning the culture war. So stream the #1 documentary of the decade, Am I Racist? Right now, only on DailyWire Plus. Now let's get to our DEI cancellation. That doesn't work. Here it is. Just before the 2012 presidential election, Michelle Obama spoke at her husband's final political rally of the campaign, which took place in Des Moines, Iowa. Now, no one ever paid any attention to this speech because it was full of the usual platitudes you'd expect. But in retrospect, when you compare the Michelle Obama from 2012 to the Michelle Obama of today, there are a few things worth noticing about it. First of all, in 2012, Michelle Obama wasn't anywhere near as angry as she is today. In her 10-minute speech in Des Moines, she laughed it up with Bruce Springsteen. She said she was thrilled to be there, repeatedly told the crowd how much she loved them. She reminisced about the house parties in Sioux City, all the kindness and warmth on the campaign trail, how funny it was to see Barack Obama's face carved in butter at the fairgrounds, et cetera, et cetera. She also didn't attack any particular demographic group or demand anything from any particular demographic group. Instead, she said that, quote, every single one of us deserves a shot at the, quote, American dream, regardless of skin color or gender. Again, not exactly earth-shattering stuff. And she didn't actually mean any of it, obviously. Throughout its 8 years in power, the Obama administration did everything it could to divide Americans on the basis of race while making middle-class families poorer. But a decade ago, Michelle Obama was able to pretend otherwise, at least in the final days of the campaign. She was able to pretend that she was happy to be on the campaign trail and working to help all Americans, et cetera, et cetera. Now, the Michelle Obama of 2024 is nothing like that. Instead, right now, Michelle Obama is very angry and disappointed. And just like her husband, she's incapable of hiding it. At a speech in Kalamazoo, Michigan on Saturday, Michelle didn't even try to deliver a message that will appeal to every American. Instead, she told men that nothing they care about actually matters. It doesn't matter if they're fed up about the economy or crime or anything like that. All men should care about, according to Michelle, is advancing the interests of women, specifically liberal women. So this is at least a more honest Michelle than we're used to. Her goal is to divide Americans, and because she's furious that Donald Trump might win again, she's not even hiding it. But before I go any further, I want to begin on a positive note. In her speech, Michelle did something that all Democrats do when they're accidentally being honest, which is that she completely forgot all about the trans ideology nonsense. When Michelle talked about advancing the interests of women, she made it clear that she's talking about adult human females. She's talking about people with female reproductive organs. Watch.
Look, a woman's body is complicated business, y'all. Yes, it brings life, and that's a beautiful thing. But even when we are not bearing children, there is so much that can go wrong at any moment. Every woman here knows what I'm talking about. An unexpected lump, an abnormal pap smear or mammogram, an infection, a blockage, all of which could be early signs of a variety of life-threatening cancers.
But just for the record, by the way, men can also get cancer, and things can go wrong in a man's body. In fact, men die earlier than women do on average. But anyway, Michelle Obama says, every woman here knows what I'm talking about, as she describes abnormal pap smears and mammograms. She adds that a woman's body brings life, and that's a beautiful thing. Now, in any other context, this would be considered trans erasure. It would be genocide, actually. It'd be the single greatest hate crime of the century. Here you have one of the most prominent Democrats in the country openly denying the existence of trans women. She's saying that it's impossible to have a woman who doesn't need a pap smear. She's saying women, by their nature, are capable of giving birth. So much for what? The last 20 years of transgender activism? Just out the window. Michelle is so angry about Kamala Harris's poll numbers that she's dropping the whole trans charade completely. Like it never happened. Of course, there'll be no outrage from trans activists about this because they're really just fronts for the DNC, but there's more. As the speech in Michigan continued, Michelle lashed out in a way that's honestly pretty incredible. Watch as Michelle explains that whatever their concerns may be, men should put them to the side because really all that matters is what women like Michelle Obama want. Watch.
So fellas, before you cast your votes, ask yourselves, what side of history do you want to be on? But to anyone out there thinking about sitting out this election or voting for Donald Trump or a third-party candidate in protest because you're fed up, let me warn you, your rage does not exist in a vacuum. If we don't get this election right, your wife, your daughter, your mother, we as women will become collateral damage to your rage. So are you as men prepared to look into the eyes of the women and children you love and tell them that you supported this assault on our safety? And to the women listening, we have every right to demand that the men in our lives do better by us. We have to use our voices to make these choices clear to the men that we love. Our lives are worth more than their anger and disappointment. And we are more than just baby-making vessels.
Now, this is a message that Democrats started seriously pushing around a month ago when Barack Obama showed up to Kamala's campaign headquarters and did the literal finger wag at black men, saying they're misogynists if they won't support the female candidate. Then it progressed with Stacey Abrams, who doubled down on that message. And now Michelle Obama is delivering the same attack on tens of millions of men. This is apparently supposed to convince men to turn out and vote for Kamala Harris, even though it's obvious to any sane, well-adjusted man that it's going to do exactly the opposite. Now, as I've emphasized many times now, it's clear that the Democrats have no message for men. They have made no attempts to appeal to men at all. Every time they speak to men, they're really just speaking to women. And Michelle Obama just came out and made that explicit. A bit of a side note, but on the same note, really, I was watching football yesterday, and I noticed as I was watching the game that there were maybe 4 or 5 Trump ads, maybe more. And they mostly touted Trump's economic record, his courage in surviving an assassination attempt. They attacked Kamala for her pro-trans extremism. Meanwhile, I saw, 1 or 2 Kamala ads, and those mostly attacked Trump for his non-existent affiliation with Project 2025. So that's how they're both messaging. But here's the thing, men don't care about Project 2025. You ask any average male voter what they're most worried about, what their concerns are going into the election. None of them are going to say Project 2025. So Trump knows how to talk to the NFL audience, who are mostly men, as much as the NFL likes to pretend otherwise. Kamala Harris and Tim Walz simply don't. But inside the machinery of the Democrat Party, they clearly think that they have a winning strategy here. Jon Favreau, the former Obama speechwriter, wrote this in response to Michelle Obama's speech in Michigan, quote, "The most powerful message to young men in the entire campaign." And then he pasted this clip in particular.
So to the men who love us, let me just try to paint a picture of what it will feel like if America, the wealthiest nation on earth, keeps revoking basic care from its women, and how it will affect every single woman in your life. Your girlfriend could be the one in legal jeopardy if she needs a pill from out of state or overseas, or if she has to travel across state lines because the local clinic closed up. Your wife or mother could be the ones at higher risk of dying from undiagnosed cervical cancer because they have no access to regular gynecological care. Your daughter could be the one too terrified to call the doctor if she's bleeding during an unexpected pregnancy.
Now, of course, everything she says in that clip is a lie. If a woman comes to you and says she's afraid to go to the hospital because she's bleeding, the appropriate response is to let her know that, that's not a thing. Go to the hospital. You can get care for in a medical emergency. There is no law in this country, even in states with so-called abortion bans, that prevents a hospital from saving a woman's life or rendering any kind of urgent necessary care. That doesn't exist. It's a total lie. But again, the bigger issue isn't the lies. We all expect lies from a speech like this. The really astonishing thing is that Democrats really believe that the most powerful message to young men in the entire campaign, quote unquote, is Michelle Obama talking about women. You'd think a powerful message to young men might address, say, why young men die of suicide and drug overdoses at extremely high rates compared to women. Or it might address why so many young men are struggling to find employment and afford houses so they can raise a family. But no, Democrats believe that a powerful message to young men is to tell them how to serve the interests of women. Now, to be fair, there is one point in the speech where Michelle claims that she cares about the interests of men. Specifically, she says that it's good for men when women are allowed to kill their children because then men can go to college. Watch.
The devastating consequences of teen pregnancy won't just be borne by young girls, but also by the young men who are the fathers. They too will have their dreams of going to college, their entire futures totally upended by an unwanted pregnancy. If you and your partner are expecting a child, you will be right by her side at the checkups, terrified if her blood pressure is too high, or if there's an issue with the placenta, or if the ultrasound shows that the embryo was implanted in the wrong place, and the doctors aren't sure that they can intervene to keep the woman you love safe.
Now, it's hard to overstate how demonic the messaging from Democrats has become. In her whole speech, this is her one suggestion for how she can improve the lives of men. Vote for us, and you can have as much meaningless sex as you want, and then you can abandon the woman and she can kill your child. That's basically the pitch. And women are supposed to like that too, even though it's hard to imagine a more demeaning way of looking at women or their children. The only way to make sense out of this is that Democrats see this election as a chance for women to get revenge, right? This is how they're going to strike back at the patriarchy. Kamala Harris hopes that female rage will carry her to the White House. Now, the only problem is that none of them have any idea why they need revenge or what they're so upset about. I mean, the easy answer is abortion, and it's true that Kamala's female voters are idolaters who worship on the altar of human sacrifice, but most of them live in states that still have legal abortion. So all of this rage is completely pointless. It's not actually going to change anything in their lives. Now, of course, Michelle is the perfect avatar for this blind, pointless rage, though. She's been walking around with a chip on her shoulder and a perpetual sneer across her face ever since her husband was elected to his first term in office. She's been given wealth and power beyond all imagining and well beyond what she deserved on the merits, and she's still angry. She doesn't know why she's angry. None of them do. That's why it wasn't as shocking as it should have been to see a Kamala supporter literally screaming at a baby the other day. This is from Harris's rally in Houston on Friday night. Watch this. So she comes over and screams in the face of a baby in a stroller. And it wasn't even like heat of the moment. Not that there could be any heat of the moment where screaming at a baby would be okay. But she walks up, like she navigates through the crowd, positions herself in front of the stroller, and then starts screaming at the baby. These people hate everything and everyone, children most of all. There is something deeply broken in the minds and souls of Kamala's female voter base. These are broken people. And Kamala Harris hopes to ride their dysfunction and emotional dysregulation to the White House. Now, at this point, I don't think it'll work, but if it does, I mean, this country is in trouble. America's first black president used his position to inflame racial tensions. And as a country, we paid the price with 15 years of BLM race riots. So what will America's first female president do to the already fraught relationship between the sexes? Based on the messages we're seeing, we can only assume it'll be even worse. Democrats are telling men that their role in life is to serve the interests of liberal women. Meanwhile, women are being told that killing their own children is in their best interests. None of that's true. What is true is that Michelle Obama, like her husband, sees a divided America as the key to the power of the Democrat Party. And that is why Michelle Obama and all the other Democrats who are making their disdain for men very clear in the final days of this presidential campaign are today canceled. That'll do it for the show today. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Talk to you tomorrow. Have a great day. Godspeed.
John Bickley here, Daily Wire Editor-in-Chief. Wake up every morning with our show, Morning Wire, where we bring you all the news that you need to know in 15 minutes or less. Join me and my co-host Georgia Howe for daily coverage of all the biggest stories on Morning Wire.